Hey everyone, my name is Rooster and welcome back to Mechabellum. Today's video I would like to show you guys a replay from a game that I played in the EU weekend against Monks, and I hope that in this game I'll be able to show you guys some tips and tricks about how to play aggro, but also how to defend against it and kind of try to talk about both sides of the equation here. So without further ado, let's get into the game. With the packs, I decided to pick Elite Spec here. And I think the nice thing about this game is that Elite Spec doesn't have that much room to maneuver because all of your units are so expensive. So usually the comps are very efficient. They're basically the core units that you will need to make a successful composition, because you can't afford all the bells and whistles and you have to make do with what is the absolute best for you. So in this situation, I'm going to pause the replay here. My opponent went for Marksman Specialist, starting out with tanks and arc lights. This is actually a pretty good opener for him into Ball Crawler. Tanks are really annoying to kill, especially if you put them vertically. But even this way, they're just big piles of hit points that get in the way of the steel balls. Arc lights are amazing against chaff clear to deal with these crawlers. Not to mention the fact that sledges can now clear level 2 crawlers, so my elite advantage isn't even that amazing. And he has the Orange Man, the level 3 marksman, that is able to one-shot my steel balls. So overall, quite a good setup here. However, when it comes to starting setup here, it's really important to think about what your opponent has and what you have, and how to make use of that. So for me, when pushing, I can either choose to push one side or to push symmetrically and split my starting units between either side of the board. Now, there are times where you want to do symmetrical pushes, but here I want to do an asymmetrical push. And the reason is, again, because this starting unit pack for my opponent is really hard for me to deal with, right? It has a lot of hit points. And so if I split my units up, it's very likely that I won't be able to get to the tower at all. However, if I stack everything on one side, I may be able to overpower his units if he does something like this, and potentially even be able to get the EXP on the marksman. If that would go onto, say, one of my steel balls, I can get an early level and then try and snowball from there. So for me, playing asymmetrical is kind of required just to be able to overpower one side and get past this very strong defensive starter from my opponent. Similarly, for my opponent, he has to realize that all of his units are very slow. And my units are all fast, right? Crawler, steel ball, they all go at 60 meters a second. Sledges only go at 7. Fangs only go at 6. Arc lights only go at 7. The marksman only goes at 8. It's not a very fast push. So what he should do here is put all of his units together. Preferably put them in the center, so that all my units get pulled no matter where I put them, and he gets to use his units in combination. Here he splits up his units, and you will see that he has this advance here on the left, but all of those units are so slow that they won't be able to threaten my tower. And when you're in a headbutt scenario where you and your opponent are on the opposite side of the board, your leverage is their tower. But here he has no leverage, as you will see, because his fangs and his tanks and his arc light are simply too slow to actually do anything meaningful, right? I will have killed all of his units, probably, by the time I get to his tower, before he even gets the debuff. And so for him here, it would have been really important to set up in a way where he is in the center. He can either choose to play backwards and play kind of in between the towers, or he can choose to play close to the line, but do a wide setup in the middle so that all of the units, no matter if they're in the left corner or on the right corner, gets pulled towards the center. And so all of his units work together. Also, he needs to protect this guy, right? This marksman is worth a lot of EXP. And so you have to make sure that, well, the odds of him dying and feeding EXP to my steel balls are as small as possible. And already here you will see what I mean, right? I decide to make a bold push and I kill all of his units before he gets to my tower. And so this debuff really does absolutely nothing whatsoever. And now sometimes a delayed tower take can be good, but you have to realize that all of these units, again, are slow. So even though he gets 9 seconds of debuff here, look at this. It takes such a long time for his units to get to where my units are that he didn't get anything out of the debuff. And now my units advance, get the other tower, and we should be able to overpower. So I was really happy with this starting setup. I think my opponent made a mistake there, which allows me to hopefully get some tempo and actually get into this game, which would have been rather difficult if the setup was different. Now here on round 2 we get Underground Threat. Gets picked up by my opponent. I think I have to pick this here as well. I was a bit on the fence. Usually I would recommend picking a card on turn 2 on Elite, because turn 2 is a little bit awkward. You only have 400 in resources, and if you have 450 you can't really buy all that much either. Usually your turn 2 will just be spent buying 2 150 costs, so having spending 300. In this particular scenario though, I could have maybe skipped, but I was scared of him going for my tower. If I did skip, I would be able to grab the level here on the steel balls, which would be quite good. But I want to try and defend this tower against the Underground Threat. Turns out my opponent was scared of it as well, and so uses it defensively himself. Not too big of a deal. We'll try and grab the level later on. And as I said, I pick up 2 crawlers here, trying to leverage my early advantage. Notice that the arc lights here at level 1 cannot one-shot level 2 crawlers. They actually need to shoot them twice. And so that is the main strength of these type of elite pushes early on, is trying to make sure that your crawlers are very annoying to deal with. And that's why also sledges are quite good as openers, because they can one-shot level 2 crawlers even if they themselves are level 1. And this is again one of the reasons that it would have been ideal for my opponents to put all of the sledges together so that all of the sledges can try and clear those crawlers, as opposed to one of the packs here again being kind of in the middle of nowhere. You get the tower again. I think my other steel balls pick up a level 2. Opponent does manage to get that tower, so it looks like they might win in this scenario. But again, this level 2 or round 2 is usually not a very strong turn for Elite, so this is fine. I got the EXP on some important units on those steel balls, and as I will be getting through the game, I'll get more money and I'll be able to buy the things that I actually would like. We get free units here on round number 3. I decided to pick up the Sabertooth here. Deployments are quite nice on Elite. I could also try and go for one of the Giants here, because it's difficult to get the unlocks considering how expensive it is, but I think Sabertooth here is a good addition to my board. They are good against sledges, they're good against arc lights, they've got nice stopping power, and they're quite tanky. Plus, it's the pack that's worth the most when selling. So, yeah. Was the right choice here for me. My opponent decides to go for Wasps, and I believe immediately sells them. And goes for ranged arc lights. Not really enjoying those crawlers, I presume. I decided to pick up a Wraith here. I didn't have any chaff clear, as you might have noticed. So, Wraith seems like the correct choice for me. I tried to put it a bit on the outside so that it works together with the steel balls, but also so that it avoids this marksman, as it is the biggest threat to the Wraith. And I imagine that he will be clicking aerial spec at some point, so making sure that the Wraith is not directly in front of it will help it survive. I also managed to grab a level here on the steel balls. Didn't quite have the money to level both, but we're starting to get there. And actually those steel balls level again. So I made the right decision there, leveling those this specific pack, because I believe it gets the XP from the marksman as well as the tower. And those are some level 3 steel balls, potentially. Interesting as well that my opponent is still leveling the left, right? I think it would have been better for him to maybe try and sell out, or try and threaten the tower by putting some faster units. Looks like my opponents will be able to kill all of my remaining units, except for that Wraith. And we take a round win. Round number 4, Smart Arclight shows up, is picked up by my opponent. He does have a lot of them, and I decide to go for the shield, considering that my opponent doesn't have the biggest of DPS. So the shield should annoy him for a bit, and maybe even get the Arclight stuck on it instead of clearing crawlers. I decided to sell out of another Saber there. It wasn't doing all too much, and the problem is that it is rather slow at 8 meters a second. All of my other units are much faster. Here I decided to level my tower once, because I was starting to get a bit afraid of him trying to go for some flank shenanigans or try and have a go at this tower, since it is very unprotected. And I decided to pick up a second Wraith. My opponent realizes that the Wraith is a big threat, level 2, very tanky, and goes for Marksman and with AA, as we expected. Now, this particular Wraith, it is in front of the Marksman, but I try and put it slightly further back. It also has a lot more crawlers. And hopefully, because of that, it'll be able to survive. Now, we can see here that the Marksman does get an insta-lock there on the Wraith, but because of the level, look at how long it survives. It survives for long enough that I managed to clear all of his chaff, right? The crawlers are gone, so at this point, I don't really mind that it dies. Level 3 Marksman in the middle, also able to lock on and get that Wraith, but all of the steel balls and crawlers get through. And here we can see that all of those crawlers and the Arclight are stuck on the tower. We get another debuff, and now we have to go and finish off those final units. Just a pack of crawlers left. And there we go. So, round 4 is a success as well. And we head into round number 5. Now, in round number 5, we get electromagnetic impact and absorption module are quite interesting here. I decided to go for the EMP because it's a good spell this early on. It has a relatively short cooldown of only 2 rounds, so it's likely to come back again. And it's just all around good. My opponent had a lot of techs, so if he didn't shield, I was hoping to hit these Arclights and Marksman. And if not, then at least I deal some damage to the shield, and we'll get some value out of it later on. My opponent also picks it up, obviously. This is the turn that I do click range, because I want the Wraith to be able to clear from further away, and also to stay away from that Marksman for as long as possible. Unfortunately, one of them will get EMP'd, but at least we put them far enough apart from one another that he can't EMP both of them. And here I decide to pick up some Wasps. I had the money left, and I thought, well, my opponent doesn't have any Mustangs yet, so let's try and get those Marksmen stuck on Wasps. And maybe try and force a response out of him, right? If I can force him into something like Mustang, then I might be in a bit of a better spot. Because right now, he's also going to struggle dealing with steel balls. So if he has to worry about something that can easily kill the steel balls, and also has to worry about something that can deal with wasps, then that's a double problem, and I can try and leverage that and get some good tempo. You can see the Wraith stays alive even when EMP'd. Those wasps doing an amazing job. Late level 3 crawlers, we did level them after they got enough EXP, are getting in. And yeah, those are very, very annoying to deal with. And this is one of the reasons why Wraith is so good, even in defensive situations, because it doesn't get stuck like Arclights. Here you can see that the Arclights will get stuck on steel balls, and then the crawlers just run in and kill them. A Wraith, well, once it's an air unit, so it can't die to crawlers. And 2, it has 4 independent shooting guns, so it's very hard to get it stuck on anything, because 3 of its other guns can still often shoot at crawlers. Round 6, bunch of giants show up, all level 2. Fortress here is the pickup for me, because I think it goes well with my other units. It's good against tanks. I can go barrier, I can protect my crawlers from missiles. And it's just a unit that fits this comp slightly better. Overlord was maybe a consideration as well, but it's weak to something like anti-air marksman. So I want to try and get something that doesn't have the same counter as the Wraith. We go instant barrier, pick up a second fortress. This is really strong about elite. If you get into the late game, you do recruit all of your giants at level 2, and level 2 barrier fortresses are insanely tanky with a lot of DPS. And I decided to go for drill here as well because the underground threat came back up. And because I had so many levels on the crawlers and some of them were getting in towards the end of the round, I thought this is a good tech. If my opponent wants to try and tech his crawlers, which he does decide to go for replicate, then drill is a lot of value for me because drill crawlers at equal level will beat replicate crawlers. And the tech is cheaper. It only costs 200 instead of 250. So if you are finding yourself in a bit of a precarious like crawler fight and you don't want to have to spend too much money, going drill is a good way of denying your opponent the replicate value. And if your crawlers get in, they will deal a lot of damage. I'm a bit surprised that my opponent wanted to go replicate here, by the way, because I have got this Wraith. Opponent went for Assault Marksman, by the way. I quite like this approach. Assault Marksman, getting that tankiness, but especially getting the splash on the main attack, means that it is able to deal with the wasps as well. And so he suddenly has dealt with basically his two problems. He gets more damage on the marksman. They can splash on the steel balls, so shoot 2 of them at once. They can splash the wasps. They're hard to kill for the Wraith because they have so much hit points. So really good tech decision there, and he does win the round. Now both of our fortresses level up here. Round number 7, Wasp Swarm shows up. My opponent decides to go for the haste module here. I decide to pick it up as well. We have a level on that Wraith on the right side. Could be a nice item. I decided to put it on the left one. I'm not really sure why. I think it might be because the additional speed on the haste module, and I was afraid that this Wraith would travel too far forward. Even though it does have the level and the damage bonus would be better on it. We grab a level, we grab more steel balls, and we decide to go for range as the steel balls were dying very fast last round. And I'm hoping that the range will make sure that they can survive for a bit longer. Shield airdrop is back online. I'm not really sure where to put it here. Probably just have to use it here or there. Also, I am deciding to loan here for temp range. As we are in round 7, which is about a normal round to start loaning. Getting towards the end game here. I doubt that this game will last for many more rounds. It's starting to pick up a lot of pace. Now giants are involved. And we can see that the steel balls stay nice and cozy underneath this barrier from the fortress. We managed to lock onto his, dying very quickly. And that is a much, much better round. So you can see what difference it makes just to click the correct tech. Realizing that the steel balls were getting out of the shield and getting killed at the start of the battle. And now just making sure that my opponent cannot kill this barrier. I mean, yes, he has marksman of decent level, but that's a big shield. That's a big shield. 36,000 hit points per level. That's 118... wait. 108. 108,000 hit point shield. We get another free unit round. I decide to sell that Rhino. I'm not really interested in any of these. I think that my comp is pretty much the way that I want it. I would rather invest in more of the same units or more techs on my units rather than try and diversify the composition and make it less efficient. Opponent decides to go for the free melters, however, going for the range and the EMP. Also, electromagnetic impact is back off cooldown. Opponent went for range on the marksman. as well. I decided to pick up 2 more fortresses and also go for launcher overload. So even attempting to get the fortresses to run in front of the steel balls and really make sure that those steel balls remain alive, especially now that we will see once the round starts that my opponent did pick up those melters. The steel balls are probably going to be even more important as they are the better counter to these specific units. I have been missiling on the left, by the way, because just in case my opponent tries to go for a cheeky like steel ball attack, something fast that can take down this tower in a short period of time. Trying to prevent that from happening. EMP here is very good though for my opponent. Gets a lot of damage onto these 3 shields and also gets to disable this one Wraith of mine. And you see my shields almost go down instantly. Very little hit points remaining from the very start, together with that EMP hit from the melting points. And you can see that I will struggle here. Massive EMP hit going onto the steel balls and the double fortresses. Really, really bad for me. And just as they come out of the EMP, they get EMP'd again. So very bad round for me, very good round for my opponent. Going for the correct pick there, it seems, from the 3 units, and teching them in the right fashion. Round 9, laser sight shows up, and this is where I'm starting to draw my attention towards the left of the field. As his tower is relatively open as well. And it seems like I am now struggling to punch through this. So I want to try and maybe go for this now that I have enough money to go for like a triple deployment attack. So I pick up another fortress, go for another steel ball, sell out of one of my wasps since they're kind of dying fast and they're not providing the same distraction value as they did when I first picked them up. And that allows me to buy mass recruit and go for another wraith, go for the mobile beacon, get the loan, the temp speed and the temp range, and go for his tower. I decided to put down 2 missiles, one to get rid of the fangs as fast as possible, and one to get rid of a potential other chaff unit in front of the tower, and just make sure that we get in as quickly as we can. Opponent tries to go for the same thing, so does realize that my tower is somewhat weak, and tries to go for a melter. But I doubt that he will enjoy what he is about to face. And he actually does put a crawler there, so this missile very, very nicely placed. And you can see right side will also be doing a bit better this turn because of the lack of electromagnetic impact. So my level 3 fortress with barrier survives for a bit longer. We do get EMP'd again though. But here we get that tower very early on in the fight. And this pack of steel balls and this level 2 fortress remain unchallenged. We get in, we get rid of the units, we get the other debuff. And we manage to finish off those pesky melters and grab ourselves the win. So, I hope that this game showed you at least some of the core ideas when pushing. I would recommend thinking about, if you want to push, do you want to push symmetrically? Do you want to push asymmetrically? Pushing asymmetrically is something that you generally want to do, especially against something like sledge openers, because they are very tanky. Even if you're not starting with steel balls, but let's say you're starting with phoenixes, trying and overpowering one side is easier to do than trying to split up your units and trying to kill both sides at the same time against sledges. Against something like Stormcallers, pushing symmetrically makes more sense, because Stormcallers will be able to deal more damage to your units if you have to travel towards them. So usually people will be putting a Stormcaller here and one here. If you're pushing in this fashion, you might get a tower, but then you have to push into the other Stormcaller, and it will have plenty of time to shoot your units. So if you push from the sides, you will generally be able to get rid of those Stormcallers at around the same time and not face that same problem. As the defender here, I think some really good moves by my opponent. I really liked the assault mode to deal with that wasp problem and also add some general tankiness and better chaff clear also against the steel balls. But at the end of the day, I think that the starting setup was really what cost him. Should have played either around the towers, but together so that the sledges can work as a pair and get rid of the crawlers, and also that all my units get pulled towards the center rather than funneling my units towards his tower. Or play on the line, but again, like basically go for a wide setup on the middle. Same thing, we should pull my units, and all of his units will be able to work together and also protect his marksman from feeding EXP to my important carries. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this game. If you did, please feel free to leave a thumbs up. If you want to see me play live, please do check me out on Twitch. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.